In the spring of 1993, something terrifying appeared in the American Southwest. Healthy young people, runners, students, newlyweds, suddenly began gasping for air. Within hours, their lungs filled with fluid. Doctors had no explanation. There were no warning signs, no known cure. And by the time hospitals understood what was happening, many patients were already dead. The victims looked as if they were drowning from the inside. Fear spread rapidly across small desert towns. Some believed it was a new plague. Others feared biological warfare. But investigators would soon discover something even more disturbing. The killer had been hiding beside humans for centuries. Silent, invisible, waiting. Long before scientists gave it a name, Hantavirus may have already been shaping human history. During the Korean War, thousands of soldiers developed a mysterious illness. They suffered from high fever, internal bleeding, and sudden kidney failure. Doctors were overwhelmed. Nobody understood where the disease came from or why it appeared so suddenly. For decades, the answers remained buried beneath military reports and forgotten medical archives. Then, in 1993, the virus returned in a form the world had never seen before. In the isolated Four Corners region of the United States, entire communities fell into panic. Young adults with no previous health conditions collapsed without warning. Investigators searched everywhere for the source: contaminated water, chemical leaks, even unknown toxins. But the real answer was far more unsettling, because it was hiding inside ordinary homes, abandoned cabins, and dusty barns across America. What scientists discovered next changed the way the world understood infectious disease forever. A tiny rodent, small enough to fit in the palm of a hand, carried one of the deadliest viruses known to modern medicine. And even more terrifying, climate, human expansion, and environmental imbalance may have helped awaken it. This is not just the story of a virus. This is the story of how nature quietly fights back. Tonight, we uncover the hidden origins of hantavirus, the forgotten warnings, the terrifying outbreaks, and the invisible connection between humans and the wild. Because the most dangerous diseases in history often do not begin in laboratories. They begin in silence. The desert was quiet that morning. Endless highways stretched across the dry lands of New Mexico, where small towns sat beneath a burning sky. Nothing seemed unusual. No explosions. No sirens. No warning. And yet, somewhere inside the isolated Four Corners region, something had already begun. Something invisible. Something deadly. In the spring of 1993, healthy young adults began arriving at hospitals unable to breathe. Some had been laughing with friends only hours earlier. Others were planning weddings, driving across highways, or returning home from work. Then suddenly, without explanation, their bodies began shutting down. Their lungs rapidly filled with fluid, as if they were drowning from the inside. Doctors watched in horror as oxygen levels collapsed faster than anything they had seen before. One patient after another entered emergency rooms with nearly identical symptoms: fever, muscle pain, crushing exhaustion. Then came the terrifying stage doctors could not stop: violent respiratory failure. Medical staff rushed through crowded hallways searching for answers, but every treatment seemed useless. Healthy people were dying within hours. Some physicians feared they were witnessing the beginning of a completely new disease. And then investigators noticed something deeply unsettling. Most of the victims were young, strong, previously healthy. This was not targeting the weak or elderly. Whatever was spreading through the region seemed to attack people in the prime of their lives. And nobody understood why. Among the earliest victims was a young Navajo couple driving through the Southwest desert. They should have had decades ahead of them. Friends described them as energetic, optimistic, full of plans for the future. But during the trip, something suddenly went wrong. The young man began struggling to breathe. His condition deteriorated with terrifying speed. By the time he reached medical care, doctors could do almost nothing to save him. What happened next shocked everyone around them. Just days after his death, the young woman also became critically ill. The symptoms were nearly identical: fever, coughing, sudden respiratory collapse. Doctors realized this could no longer be dismissed as coincidence. Two healthy young people had died in almost exactly the same way. Rumors spread rapidly across nearby communities. Some believed a toxic chemical had contaminated the area. Others whispered about secret military experiments hidden somewhere in the desert. Fear grew stronger with every new death. Parents stopped allowing children outside at night. Hospital workers feared they could be infected next. Nobody knew whether the killer was airborne, contagious, or already spreading beyond the region. But hidden beneath the panic was an even darker truth. Investigators would soon discover that the virus was not new at all. It had likely existed for centuries, silently moving through the shadows of the American wilderness, unnoticed by modern civilization. As the death toll increased, local hospitals became overwhelmed with fear. Doctors wore masks without knowing if they offered any protection. Nurses described patients gasping desperately for air moments before collapsing completely. Some victims deteriorated so quickly that families barely had time to say goodbye. It felt less like a medical emergency and more like the beginning of a nightmare. News stations across America began using terrifying phrases: mystery disease, killer virus, new plague. Television broadcasts showed images of ambulances, quarantine discussions, and frightened residents across the Southwest. The public demanded answers, but scientists still had none. Every theory raised new fears. Could this spread nationwide? Was it mutating? Had it already crossed state borders? Then came the most disturbing discovery yet. Nearly all the victims had spent time in rural homes, trailers, cabins, or dusty storage areas shortly before becoming sick. It was the first real clue, a silent pattern hidden beneath the chaos. And somewhere inside that pattern, investigators believed the real killer was waiting. What they were about to uncover would transform modern epidemiology forever. Because the deadliest threat in the Four Corners outbreak was not hiding inside laboratories, hospitals, or government facilities. It was hiding in the wilderness, right beside humanity. Long before the world heard the word Hantavirus, soldiers were already dying from something nobody could explain. During the early years of the Korean War, thousands of United Nations troops stationed across the Korean peninsula began developing a terrifying illness. At first, military doctors believed it was exhaustion, exposure, or battlefield infection. But then the symptoms became impossible to ignore. Healthy young soldiers suddenly collapsed with burning fevers, blurred vision, and severe internal pain. Within days, some victims began bleeding internally. Others suffered kidney failure, so severe that their bodies could no longer remove toxins from the blood. Medical tents filled with terrified young men whose conditions worsened hour by hour. Doctors had never seen anything spread like this before. The illness moved silently through military camps near rivers and forests, striking without warning and disappearing just as mysteriously. Military officials feared something catastrophic was unfolding. Some suspected biological warfare. Others believed communist forces may have deployed an unknown weapon. Across the chaos of the Cold War, paranoia spread quickly. Every unexplained illness became a possible act of war. Yet despite growing fear, nobody could identify the true source of the disease. For decades, these outbreaks remained buried inside military archives and forgotten reports. But years later, scientists would uncover a disturbing possibility. The virus terrifying America in 1993 may have been connected to the same invisible killer that haunted soldiers during the Korean War. In the 1970s, scientists returned to South Korea searching for answers hidden for decades. The key clue led them toward a quiet stretch of water known as the Hantan River. Nearby villages had experienced repeated outbreaks of the same mysterious illness seen during the war. Local doctors noticed a strange pattern. The disease appeared more often near rural farmland, forests, and rodent-heavy regions. Researchers began trapping small wild rodents across the countryside. At first, the animals seemed harmless. Tiny heartbeat, soft fur, fragile bodies. But hidden inside some of them was a virus unlike anything scientists had identified before. After years of investigation, researchers isolated the pathogen and named it after the nearby river, Hantan. That was the moment the invisible killer finally received a name, Hantavirus. The discovery changed modern epidemiology forever. Scientists realized humanity had likely been living beside this virus for centuries without understanding it. Entire outbreaks once blamed on unknown fevers, military stress, or environmental poisoning suddenly looked very different. The virus may have been hiding in plain sight all along. But one terrifying question remained unanswered. If the virus had existed quietly for decades, why did some outbreaks suddenly become deadly enough to terrify entire nations? As scientists dug deeper into the history of hantavirus-like illnesses, disturbing reports began emerging from the former Soviet Union. Hidden inside Cold War, medical archives were descriptions of unexplained outbreaks spreading through remote military regions and isolated villages. Victims suffered many of the same symptoms: high fever, bleeding, kidney failure, and sudden collapse. Yet many of these incidents were never publicly discussed outside classified circles. During the Cold War, governments feared that acknowledging mysterious diseases could create panic, or worse, reveal military weakness. Soviet officials tightly controlled outbreak information, especially in border regions connected to strategic operations. In some reports, entire villages were quarantined while investigators searched desperately for answers. Rumors spread through local populations that invisible poisons or secret weapons were responsible. The atmosphere of the era made everything more terrifying. The world was already living under the shadow of nuclear war, espionage, and biological paranoia. Every mysterious outbreak risked becoming an international crisis. Scientists often worked in silence, unable to openly share discoveries across political borders. Valuable information disappeared behind classified documents and military secrecy. And while governments argued, censored, and concealed information, the virus continued moving silently through forests, rivers, and rodent populations across continents, waiting patiently for humanity to notice it again. For weeks, investigators searched desperately for the source of the outbreak. They tested water supplies, examined chemical exposure, and considered the possibility of an entirely new airborne disease. But every lead collapsed into uncertainty. Then, quietly, almost unnoticed, attention shifted toward something most people ignored every day: rodents. At night, government field teams entered abandoned homes and isolated barns across the Southwest. Flashlights cut through layers of dust floating in the darkness. Night vision cameras revealed movement beneath broken floorboards and inside forgotten storage rooms. Tiny creatures moved silently through the shadows, slipping between walls and dry wooden beams. They looked harmless, fragile, almost invisible. Yet investigators began noticing a disturbing pattern. Many infected homes showed signs of heavy rodent activity. Scientists soon focused on one species in particular, the deer mouse. Common across North America, the animal had lived beside humans for generations. People saw them in barns, cabins, sheds, and rural homes without thinking twice. But laboratory testing revealed something shocking. Many of these mice carried the virus naturally, without appearing sick themselves. The discovery changed everything. The invisible killer was not hiding in secret laboratories or contaminated hospitals. It was hiding inside ordinary ecosystems. quietly surviving in wild rodent populations while humanity remained completely unaware. What frightened scientists most was not just the virus itself, but how easily ordinary people could encounter it without ever realizing the danger. Victims did not need to touch sick animals directly. Many had never even seen a mouse before becoming infected. The threat moved silently through the air itself. Inside abandoned cabins and dusty storage spaces, infected rodents left behind urine, droppings, and saliva. Over time, these materials dried into tiny particles almost impossible to see. Then, with something as simple as sweeping a floor or opening an old shed, the particles could rise into the air. Invisible aerosol clouds carrying the virus drifted through confined spaces, waiting to be inhaled. That realization terrified epidemiologists because it transformed everyday environments into potential risk zones. A family cleaning an old garage, a traveler entering an unused cabin, a farmer working inside a barn. None of them would know they were breathing in one of the deadliest respiratory viruses in modern history. And yet, the deeper scientists investigated, the stranger the mystery became. If deer mice had existed for centuries, why did the deadly outbreak explode specifically in 1993? Why then? Why there? The answer may have begun years earlier, not in hospitals, but in the climate itself. In the early 1990s, unusual weather patterns swept across the American Southwest. Heavy rainfall transformed dry desert landscapes into unexpectedly fertile terrain. Grasslands expanded. Seeds and vegetation multiplied rapidly across the region. To most people, it looked like nature was recovering. But beneath the surface, another chain reaction had already begun. The increased plant growth created enormous food supplies for rodents. Mouse populations exploded across rural regions. Barns, sheds, trailers, and abandoned homes suddenly became crowded nesting grounds. More rodents meant more virus circulation. And as human communities expanded deeper into rodent habitats, contact became unavoidable. Scientists later connected the phenomenon to El Niño, a massive climate cycle capable of altering rainfall and ecosystems across entire continents. The implications were staggering. A change in Pacific Ocean temperatures may have indirectly contributed to human deaths thousands of miles away. One climate event led to more vegetation. More vegetation led to more mice. More mice led to more virus exposure. And more exposure led to human tragedy. For the first time, humanity began realizing something deeply uncomfortable. The outbreak was not simply a medical accident. It was part of a larger ecological system, one connecting climate, wildlife, and human civilization itself. And if nature could trigger a deadly chain reaction once, it could happen again. By the time doctors identified the virus, another terrifying realization had already emerged. The real danger was not only the infection itself. In many patients, the human body was helping destroy itself. What physicians were witnessing became known as Hantavirus, pulmonary syndrome, one of the deadliest respiratory illnesses modern medicine had ever encountered. The illness often began deceptively like the flu. Victims developed fever, headaches, chills, and severe muscle pain. Some complained of exhaustion, so overwhelming they could barely stand. At first, many patients believed they had a common seasonal illness. Even experienced doctors struggled to recognize what was coming next. Then suddenly, everything changed. Patients began gasping for breath as fluid flooded into their lungs. Oxygen levels collapsed. Hearts raced uncontrollably. Some victims deteriorated so rapidly that they required emergency ventilation within hours. Doctors described the terrifying sensation as similar to drowning, except there was no water around them. The body itself had become the trap. Scientists eventually realized the virus could trigger an extreme immune response inside the lungs. Blood vessels became dangerously leaky as the immune system attacked infected tissues with overwhelming force. In trying to save the body, the immune system could unintentionally help destroy it. Inside intensive care units, the atmosphere became unbearable. Machines beeped constantly, while doctors fought to keep patients alive, minute by minute. Families stood helplessly behind glass windows, watching loved ones struggle for air. Some victims were fully conscious during the collapse of their lungs. They could feel themselves suffocating while unable to stop it. Nurses later described the fear in patients' eyes as unforgettable. Healthy young adults who had walked into hospitals only a day earlier suddenly looked terrified, exhausted, and desperate. Every breath became a battle. Every second without oxygen pushed organs closer to failure. In some cases, even powerful ventilators could not force enough air into fluid-filled lungs. For families, the speed of the disease felt unreal. Parents lost children within days. Husbands lost wives before understanding what illness had even entered their homes. Entire communities watched healthy neighbors disappear almost overnight. And because the virus was still poorly understood, fear spread beyond the hospitals into ordinary daily life. The horror of Hantavirus was not only physical, it was psychological. Invisible particles, silent infection, sudden collapse. It transformed ordinary breathing, the most natural human act, into something fragile and terrifying. What terrified the medical community most was the mortality rate. In the early outbreaks, a shocking percentage of infected patients died despite aggressive treatment. Even advanced hospitals struggled to keep victims alive once respiratory failure began. There was no specific cure, no antiviral treatment capable of reliably stopping the disease. Doctors could only support the body and hope patients survived long enough for the immune system to recover. Researchers feared an even darker possibility. Viruses evolve constantly. If hantavirus ever gained the ability to spread efficiently between humans, the consequences could be catastrophic. Scientists began asking difficult questions. Could another outbreak appear without warning? Could climate and environmental destruction create more opportunities for spillover events? Could isolated rural cases become something much larger? The memories of the 1993 outbreak forced epidemiologists to confront a disturbing reality. Modern civilization was deeply connected to ecosystems it barely understood. Human expansion, climate shifts, and wildlife interaction were creating new pathways for ancient viruses to emerge. Hantavirus was not simply a rare disease from the desert. It was a warning. And as scientists searched for answers, one terrifying question continued echoing through hospitals, laboratories, and government agencies around the world. Could this become the next global pandemic? As panic spread across the American Southwest, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention launched one of the most intense epidemiological investigations in modern U.S. history. Teams of scientists, infectious disease experts, and field researchers rushed into isolated desert communities, carrying protective equipment and portable laboratories. Nobody knew exactly what they were dealing with, only that healthy people were dying terrifyingly fast. Investigators moved from house to house, searching for patterns hidden beneath the outbreak. They collected blood samples, examined ventilation systems, and interviewed grieving families, trying to reconstruct victims' final days. Some teams entered abandoned cabins where thick layers of dust covered the floors. Others searched barns and storage sheds filled with rodent nests. Every footprint, every droppings trail, every tiny hair became potential evidence. Soon, the desert itself became an enormous outdoor laboratory. Researchers set thousands of rodent traps across the Four Corners region, carefully documenting species populations and infection rates. What they discovered confirmed humanity's worst fears. Large numbers of deer mice were carrying the virus silently across the landscape. Entire ecosystems had become reservoirs for an invisible biological threat. But as science searched for biological answers, another perspective began emerging. one rooted not in laboratories, but in centuries of cultural memory. Within the Navajo Nation, some elders viewed the outbreak through a very different lens. Long before modern epidemiology existed, certain traditional stories had already warned about imbalance between humans, animals, and the natural world. In some oral histories, mice were associated with caution, contamination, or disrupted harmony. The land itself was seen as alive, capable of responding when balance was broken. For many families living close to the land, the outbreak did not feel entirely random. Years of environmental change, economic hardship, abandoned housing, and shifting weather patterns had altered daily life across the region. Some community members believed the growing disruption between humanity and nature carried consequences that modern society no longer understood. Scientists did not treat these beliefs as medical explanations. Yet many researchers later acknowledged something important. Indigenous communities often possess deep environmental awareness built across generations of observation. They understood animal behavior, seasonal cycles, and ecological warning signs in ways modern systems sometimes overlooked. The outbreak forced two worlds to confront the same terrifying truth from different directions. Modern science saw a virus. Traditional wisdom saw imbalance. But both pointed toward the same conclusion. Humanity was not separate from nature. Even after the Four Corners outbreak faded from headlines, Hantavirus did not disappear. New cases continued emerging across different parts of the world, reminding scientists that the virus still existed quietly inside rodent populations. In the United States, sporadic infections appeared in rural cabins, national parks, and farming regions years after the original outbreak. The threat remained rare, but very real. In South America, some outbreaks became even more alarming. Certain strains appeared capable of limited human-to-human transmission, raising fears among epidemiologists worldwide. Meanwhile, China and Russia continued reporting thousands of hantavirus-related illnesses linked to regional rodent species. Entirely different strains evolved across continents, each adapted to local ecosystems and wildlife reservoirs. The more scientists studied hantavirus, the clearer the picture became. This was not a single isolated outbreak from 1993. It was part of a much larger global network connecting wildlife, climate, and human civilization. Forest destruction, environmental disruption, and expanding human populations were increasing contact between species everywhere on Earth. And perhaps the most unsettling realization of all was this: hantavirus never disappeared. It simply returned to the shadows, waiting for the next opportunity to emerge again. More than 30 years after the Four Corners outbreak, scientists continue asking a deeply uncomfortable question. What happens if the conditions that created hantavirus outbreaks become more common? Around the world, climates are shifting. Temperatures are rising. Rainfall patterns are changing. Entire ecosystems are moving out of balance. And as the environment changes, animals are moving with it. Researchers studying climate change have observed expanding rodent habitats in multiple regions of the world. Species once limited to isolated environments are entering new territories, often closer to human populations than ever before. Forest destruction, urban expansion, and agricultural pressure are forcing wildlife and humanity into increasingly dangerous contact zones. The danger is not limited to hantavirus alone. Scientists now believe many future pandemics may emerge from the same ecological pressures. A warming planet changes migration patterns. Migration changes animal interactions. Animal interactions increase viral evolution and spillover risk. The chain reaction that once shocked the American Southwest may become part of a much larger global pattern. And perhaps the most disturbing part is this: nature does not need human permission to change the rules. For centuries, humanity believed technology would eventually place nature under complete control. Cities grew larger. Medicine became more advanced. Modern civilization expanded into forests, deserts, and remote wilderness areas once considered untouchable. Step by step, humans began acting as though the natural world had become predictable, manageable, safe. But hantavirus exposed a dangerous illusion. A microscopic pathogen carried by a tiny wild rodent was enough to overwhelm hospitals, terrify governments, and challenge modern medicine itself. The outbreak revealed something civilization often forgets. Humanity is not separate from nature. It is part of it, vulnerable to the same ecological systems it tries to dominate. Even today, vast numbers of viruses remain undiscovered in animal populations across Earth. Scientists estimate that many future diseases may already exist, silently inside wildlife reservoirs, waiting for environmental disruption or human contact to create the next spillover event. In many ways, the story of hantavirus is not only about the past, it may also be about the future, because the next outbreak may already be forming somewhere beyond the edges of human attention. Today, hantavirus remains rare, but it has not vanished. Cases still appear in parts of the United States, South America, Asia, and Europe each year. Public health agencies monitor outbreaks carefully, especially in regions with large rodent populations or unusual climate activity. Awareness campaigns now teach people how to safely clean abandoned buildings, reduce rodent exposure, and recognize early symptoms before respiratory collapse begins. Modern medicine has also improved dramatically since 1993. Doctors now recognize hantavirus symptoms earlier, allowing patients to receive intensive respiratory support faster than before. Advanced critical care techniques, including oxygen therapy, mechanical ventilation, and extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, known as ECMO, have increased survival rates in severe cases. Researchers continue developing antiviral strategies and experimental vaccines, though no universal cure yet exists. Yet despite scientific progress, one fact remains unchanged. The virus still survives in nature exactly as it did decades ago, silent, adaptive, patient, waiting inside rodent populations spread across continents and ecosystems humans can never fully control. Hantavirus did not begin in a laboratory. It began in silence, in the wild, waiting, and somewhere, even now, it may still be waiting. As we've seen today, some of the most dangerous threats in human history are not always visible. Sometimes they emerge silently, from nature, from imbalance, from places humanity rarely thinks to look. And perhaps that is what makes stories like Hantavirus so unforgettable. They remind us how fragile life can truly be. If you enjoyed this documentary and want to explore more forgotten outbreaks, mysterious diseases, and hidden moments from history, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss the next story. Leave a comment below and tell us, do you believe humanity is truly prepared for the next pandemic? Or are there still invisible threats waiting somewhere beyond our understanding? And if this story fascinated you, the next documentary on this channel may change the way you see history forever. Until next time, stay curious, stay aware, and most importantly, stay healthy.